So what is your opinion on the word dude?
I will start off by saying, dude. I say it a lot. I'm a dude person. I've always been a dude person. I very much a tomboy, so like growing up I hung out with a lot of guys, so it was just natural like to
Hmm.
call me dude. It's one of the things now as language evolves and we learn that different terms are offensive or hurtful to other folks. That's one of the things that's been really hard for me to let go. And the same thing with saying you guys. I'm originally from
Wait,
Michigan, so I
wait, hold on. Dude is offensive now?
it can be to some people. Most of the time, it would be, as an example, someone who is a trans woman. It's important to try to evolve as language evolves, but there's never going to be like a 100% agreement about what term. Like, even for me, my dad calls himself Hispanic. I don't use that. I take offense to that term because it just is based on being someone who speaks Spanish, being someone who is basically colonized by Spain, right? It takes away our identity. But he doesn't like to say like Latino because he feels like that is going to draw more negative attention to him, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it's always evolving.
I guess it's like, why do we keep accommodating such a small minority of group of people? Like, if they're offended, like, not great, but I mean, you should tiptoe now everybody out. Like, they should deal with their own issue.
I can make a comparison to accessibility here. And this is something that we hear a lot of folks who are not disabled. Like, why should we change what we're doing to accommodate a few disabled folks? Like, why don't they just get over it and understand that, as an example, if you're deaf, like, you can't go to the movies. Like, why should we change things for them? Why should we, like, you know, bring in technology that can show captions to them either on the screen or I think they have like handheld devices or something. When I'm creating content, there is no way to be 100% accessible. Even
Hmm.
if I ensure that it is considered accessible by the different guidelines that are in place. I can have captions on every video. I can have a transcript attached. I can have just everything that you think about to be 100% accessible, but then you have to think disability as a spectrum, right?
Hmm.
So someone that is like, as an example, I'm colorblind. My son is
Hmm.
colorblind. My dad is colorblind. We all have exactly the same kind,
Hmm.
but we can tell you different
Okay.
colors when we look at something. Like, you can ask us, what color is that? And I'm going to be like, it's purple. My son's going to say it's brown. My dad's going to be like, that's blue. But we have exactly the same kind. And so it's on a
Hmm.
spectrum.
It's kind of like shitty. I'd like this to say out loud, but like, as a disabled person, I'm so limited by myself. I don't want to be limited by somebody else anymore. Like, I'm just tired. I've been surrounded by disabled people, and you're always anchored by like the least, the weakest denominator in the group. And I get that, but like, for me, it hurts a lot because I'm limiting myself to that person, and it sucks for that person. I really feel for them, but like, I also want to live a great life that I can go higher. But I'm always limited by that, so I have like a weird resentment against the disabled community because I'm always limited by it. But I'm also in a gray area because if I'm surrounded by able-bodied people, I'm kind of almost the anchor to that group because they can do everything and
Mm-hmm.
I can. Talk to people that were not disabled to disabled. Like, you wouldn't know anything about anything either. Like, don't put yourself on a high horse because they don't understand, because they would understand either. Like, you don't understand the topic because it never mattered to you, Like, disabled people, I think they're just too angry, and I get kind of the anger of it, but you can't be mad at people for doing that. Like, doesn't benefit at all. Like, look at most charities. Most charities are not because they're nice, it's that they have like someone in their family that has this disability and stuff. Like, no,
Mm-hmm.
every person that cares about disability are affected because they've been affected by someone personally in their life.
I remembered a quote from Rick and Morty that seemed like applicable about, complaining versus, like taking action.
Hmm.
So there's an episode where Beth asks Jerry, Jerry, do you want to end homelessness? And he's like, yeah. And she goes, And are you going to go out and build houses for the homeless? And he's like, no. And she's like, well, then what good is the yes? Right? And that's how it feels a lot of times with a lot of this stuff. You get people that are wanting to bring attention to a certain thing, but like you said, they're not taking any action.
Hello, welcome to my podcast, to my one Joe Suits. I am Joe Suits. I'll be giving a mic to Bella. Bella will be bringing her big Bella energy today as we talk about inclusive language. And then this is the part we should describe ourselves. So I'll go first. So I'm a white, cis is normal male, right? I always get it confused.
Cisgender, yeah.
Cis is just a normal male, right?
It's like you present the same way that you were your sex at birth. So yeah, you would be like a cisgender male.
Okay, so I am cis.
You don't have to include that if you don't want to. Like, yeah.
I honestly, I really get it confused with the whole language. Well, you're an expert on this, so of course you know, but I would get it confused.
You can literally, yeah. You could literally just say, like, I am a white man, I'm wearing a black Dior hat, you know, and, like, I have, like, a goatee. Like, you could even just do that. Like, it doesn't have to get really detailed. Mine is almost, like, on autopilot because I have to say it so much.
Yeah. I'm going to leave all of this in just so everyone can watch me just fail miserably.
I love it.
Hey, this is my first time. So I'm a white male wearing a black Dior hat. I'm wearing a shirt that resembles snake skin, and I think that's, and I have a goatee going on right now. I'm wearing glasses with blue tint in them. So I guess, Bella, you can go now.
Yeah, that was really good. I'm happy for
Thank you
to do that. So yeah, I'm Bela Gaitan. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I am a light-skinned Latino woman with very short curly hair with shaved sides. I'm wearing a black t-shirt with Rick from Rick and Morty that says, "You're a piece of shit," and I can prove it mathematically. And yeah, just behind me, I've got like a green wall, a painting, and some plants and other little tchotchkes here and there.
Perfect. Yeah, we were talking to Bella yesterday, and this is my first time like describing myself. And this one day, I'm just gonna say I'm black just for the hell of it, and just to fuck with people. But I know, like, professionally, I shouldn't do it. But like, a part of me is like, I want to do it because if you just hear my voice. I think it come off as pretty white, but there could be someone that'd be like, oh wow, he is black. I don't know. But anyway, that'll be for another episode. That was a great answer to do. But it's actually perfect that you just talk about that because you are a polygot. I think that's how you say the word. And a language nerd, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I have a serious question and I need a serious answer. Are you ready?
Yeah, always.
So what is your opinion on the word dude?
I will start off by saying dude. I say it a lot. I am a dude person. I've always been a dude person. I very much a tomboy, so like growing up I hung out with a lot of guys, so it was just natural like to call me dude. It's one of the things now as language evolves and we learn that different terms are offensive or hurtful to other folks. That's one of the things that's been really hard for me to let go. And the same thing with saying you guys. I'm originally from Michigan.
Wait, hold on. Dude is offensive now?
It can be to some people. Most of the time it would be, as an example, someone who is a trans woman may be offended by hearing dude, because dude is typically, I should say classically, kind of associated with being a man, being male.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think one of the things that I talk about a lot is just try to listen to the people that have lived experience. If, like, a trans woman comes to you and says, hey, Joe, like, please don't call me dude. Like, I don't like that. It's hurtful. Okay, like, don't call that person dude. But, you know, for me, like, I have certain people that I do call dude because I know that they're comfortable with it. But I try not to say it like if I'm putting out like a piece of content or something. But that's the thing with language, and even everything that's under the diversity, equity, inclusion, umbrella, like it's constantly changing and language evolves. And even so, if you notice, like when I introduced myself, I said that I am a Latine with an E at the end, not Latino and not Latina. And so that's one of the things that's been changing. We have like Latinx, but to be honest, a white person made that up. It was not someone that was like Latine. And it was just some weird way to put, an X on the end to try to make it gender neutral. Well, in Spanish, we already have gender neutral words. They end in an E. And so, like saying Latine is more, just not having to use like a gendered word, which some people I think in English, you get a lot of people that don't really understand it because it's not a gendered language per se. But you get into languages like Spanish and like the Romance languages and all of the other ones, even inanimate objects are either male or female. And so I think that's where language is really trying to evolve and kind of get away from that. It's kind of archaic mentality that like a gender has to be assigned always. But yeah. So long story, back to your question. I am a dude person. You may call me dude. Absolutely. One of my nicknames is Uncle Bela, so absolutely you can call me dude.
I'm kind of disappointed that dude is like now not like a good word because I feel like a dude is such a neutral term for like everyone and everything, and like I could never imagine in a million years that could be actually offensive to somebody.
Yeah, it's interesting because, to be honest, I kind of had that feeling initially as well when I heard about it. And the same thing with like you guys, but I think it's important for us, like when we get that moment of discomfort where we're like, that's offensive. Like to think that if someone says they're offended, they are offended. It doesn't matter if we intended it or not. So yeah, I think it's just it's important to try to evolve as language evolves, but there's never going to be like a 100% agreement about what term, like even for me, my dad calls himself Hispanic. I don't use that. I take offense to that term because it just is based on being someone who speaks Spanish, being someone who is basically colonized by Spain, right? It takes away our identity. But he doesn't like to say like Latino because he feels like that is going to draw more negative attention to him, if that makes any sense. So yeah, it's always evolving. And there's also a gnat here, so I'm not like slapping you or hoping I can slap you. I'm just trying to get rid of the gnat.
You're all good. Yeah, I mean, I guess the question then becomes, if they are offended, then so what? Like, it doesn't, like, why do we have to keep accommodating such a small minority or group to change the entire language for everybody? Like, if someone's offended by dude, I mean, I never met a person that's offended by the word dude, and I don't think anyone would take offense to it. I think it just, I guess, like, the way you described it, dude, is, like, definition wise it's more for male, and I get it, but like I feel like most people understand like the nuances of dude, that like it doesn't really mean like if I'm calling a woman a dude, it's not like, oh my god, I think you're a man now. Like I don't think so. So like what,
Yeah.
like I guess it's like, why do we keep accommodating such a small minority of group of people? Like if they're offended, like that's great, but I mean you should tiptoe now everybody else, like they should deal with their own issue.
So I think I can make a comparison to accessibility here. And this is something that we hear a lot of folks who are not disabled. Like, why should we change what we're doing to accommodate a few disabled folks? Like, why don't they just get over it and understand that, as an example, if you're deaf, like, you can't go to the movies. Like, why should we change things for them? Why should we, like, you know, bring in technology that can show captions to them either on the screen, or I think they have like handheld devices or something. I think that's just a very similar kind of parallel there. And as humans, we are creatures of habit. We understand best what is familiar to us. And so I think that when we hear something like that, if it doesn't affect like ourselves personally, it's very hard to grasp. It's very hard to be like, well, like if they get offended, they get offended. But yeah, I think to be honest, I have not encountered anyone that has heard the word dude and said, hey, like, could you use like another gender neutral term?
Wait,
Um,
so where did your opinion of dude being offensive come from then? If you never met anyone that offended by it?
Not like personally offended that I have had like a conversation with, like where I have
Um,
said dude and they're like, whoa, Bella. But I have seen it in different spaces before in terms of like using like gender neutral terms. So I wonder if it's hard for you to grasp because, as you said, like you're a cisgendered male, right? So it would never really apply to you. And so I'm wondering if that's why you're kind of like feeling like, well, what the fuck? Like, why is this important? You know what I'm saying? Because I'll be
um,
honest, before I quote unquote became disabled, and I can talk about that if needed, I
mhm.
would see people parking in like a accessible parking spot that didn't look disabled. And in my mind, I would be like, well, that lazy piece of shit. Like they're parking there and
Mhm.
there's nothing wrong with them, right? And so, because it didn't affect me. And so I just jumped to like a totally like polar opposite view of it. And now I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was there was a lot of like learning and unlearning that I've had to do.
I mean, I get where you're coming from. I mean, I kind of had a similar experience. I was born actually non-disabled, and then it's just my disability got worse over time. So I do get where you're coming from, but it's kind of weird. Like when you're a disabled person, that you automatically become like pro-disabled everything, and I get that, but I'm kind of like a little bit against the disability like movement. I guess is like I think like our biggest problems with disability is that we are a minority group, and like we can't have everything accommodated to us. So like, like if there's a restaurant that's not wheelchair accessible, like for me, all I do is just accept it and move on with my life. Like I'm not gonna force realistically a business to invest $1,000 to remodel their entrance for one person. I don't think that's just realistic for the business and stuff. And like I I'm okay with the limitation that I do have. I do say that I am privileged to live in New York City, so a lot of things are accessible, but there are a lot of things that are not accessible either. But I accept my limitation of my disability and such, and I feel like other people should accept it. I know that it's hard for a lot of, especially disabled people, to accept, but like we can't just accommodate everyone if you're just one person. Like you kind of have to go with the masses of things, and like there are some things that just suck, and you just have to accept it. Like I accept it. I accept there'll be things that I'll never do, like let's say go to space. Like what am I going to make them it wheelchair accessible and just take one person? It's like no, like we got to be a little bit realistic with ourselves too, and you can't do that. Like if you're offended, like great, like I don't really care. I mean, as a disabled person, I just accept that I'm a limited person, I'm a minority group, and it's okay if I'm not accommodated for myself, and I'm okay with that. I don't know how you feel about that. Like we have to help everyone. I don't think we should help everyone.
So I think it's impossible for us to, well, I don't think, I know it's impossible for us to accommodate everyone, right? But I think one of the things that, like myself, so I am a disability advocate and I'm also like an
Mm-hmm.
accessibility advocate and teacher, and such. One of the things that we do try to tell folks is like progress over perfection. If you know Meryl Evans, that is her like little phrase that she loves to say, progress over perfection. And what we mean by that is do what you're able to do to be more inclusive, right? So let's
Mm-hmm.
say that you went into like a mom and pop, diner, right? And
Mm-hmm.
obviously it's a little bitty space, it's not accessible. There's no way that they could physically alter that space to be able to allow you entry into it. Because again, let's just say it's a very narrow space. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
little bitty, company owned by, grandma and grandpa, right? So yeah, absolutely. There's no way that they would be able to do that. And they shouldn't have to move to a different location that is wheelchair
Mm-hmm.
accessible. But they could make some different little things, like maybe there's a little bit of space outside where on a nice day someone who is in a wheelchair would have a place to be able to sit there and still be able to eat at that restaurant, right? um, they could indicate on their website very clearly that this area is not, or this space is not wheelchair accessible, so that, let's say you're looking at this restaurant online, you're like, let me look at the menu to see if I'm even going to like anything. Oh, it's not wheelchair accessible. I know that I'll probably have to get something to go and not be able
Mm-hmm.
to like dine in the space. And it's the same thing with trying to, so as a my profession, I'm an instructional designer, just meaning that I create courses and learning and stuff like that for organizations, schools, whatever. When I'm creating content, there is no way to be 100% accessible, even
Mm-hmm.
if I ensure that it is considered accessible by the different guidelines that are in place. I can have captions on every video. I can have a transcript attached. I can have, just everything that you think about to be 100% accessible. But then you have to think disability as a spectrum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So someone that is, like, as an example, I'm colorblind. My son is colorblind. My dad is colorblind. We all have exactly the same kind,
Mm-hmm.
but we can tell you different
Okay.
colors when we look at something. Like, you can ask us, what color is that? And I'm going to be like, it's purple. My son's going to say it's brown. My dad's going to be like, that's blue. But we have exactly the same kind. And so it's on a
Mm-hmm.
spectrum. And so you never know exactly how it's going to affect someone. A lot of the accessibility guidelines are like, don't use 100% black, like on your websites or on your, graphics. It's too harsh on the eyes for people who are colorblind. Well, who the hell figured that out, right? Was it colorblind folks? Or was it folks who are not colorblind that are just pouring through research and data and stuff like that? Because for me, colorblind, I want the darkest black that you can see because that's easier on my eyes. And so there's no way that we can accommodate everyone, right? Think of it like a
Dark
dinner
mode for the
party.
win. Um,
Yeah, like think about a dinner party. If, I ask everyone, like, what's your dietary preferences or do you have limitations, right? Unless you're like a massively rich and someone says, well, I have to eat halal, and someone says, oh, my food needs to be kosher, it needs to be vegan, it needs to be pescatarian. Like, you go into all these different things, and if you can't afford that, then obviously you can't accommodate everyone, right? So it's just, starting by doing the little things that you can do to be more inclusive. And just like you doing the visual description, like it's the smallest thing that you can do, but it helps so many people.
I get where you're coming from, and like I'm a creator, so like I have to do this stuff like kind of all the time. Like the caption is super annoying. I hate doing a caption because my captioning software doesn't do me properly for some strange reason. I
Yeah.
hate that, but that's something I'm willing to do because caption helps a lot of people. I think, like you kind of mentioned, that it's impossible to cover everyone, and also it's kind of like a money and time issue. Like, you can't just go and keep. I mean, I'm just a small person, so I can't putting all this work for each video, or I just wouldn't have enough time. It
Yeah.
wouldn't be enough effort to do all of that, and it's not. And if I'm only accommodating one person, that's really not worth my time at all. I think that's kind of a problem with it too. I mean, I'm also working on a business myself, and like you,
Yeah.
like, creating the website myself, and like my whole color scheme is red, black, and white, and it could be a black background. I mean, I asked someone that's blind, hey, the logo is okay, and she said she loved it, but like it is really hard to accommodate everyone. And I mean, I also think as a disabled person, as much as someone is accommodating to them, I think you also have to, if it comes with a disability, that you have to look out for yourself. So if they're serving food and you can't eat the food, you shouldn't be mad at it. You should just go and bring your own food and take it from there. Like, you have to take some responsibility too. It's just unfortunate that you have. I mean, I guess you can kind of apply it to like women, for example. So like, let's say women have periods, right? Like, should they have tampons and pads for you? No, you go and you bring your own. I think some of the fancier do have some, like backup or something, but most of the time you have to like, hey, like I have this problem. It's kind of my problem. I have to deal with it my way. I shouldn't have someone else accommodate it for you. And if the situation is not good enough for me, I can't tell them to do anything. I have to go along with it.
Yeah, I think, yeah, you're definitely right there. We do have to have, what's the word I'm looking for? Mm,
A line, I guess.
I can't think of the, no, I can't think of the word. It's not self-serving. I have some cognitive
Self-sufficient.
issues as well, so I'm like, yeah, maybe that's, yeah, self-sufficient maybe. Like, we have to take care of ourselves, basically. That's true. Like, we definitely have to take care of ourselves. And I want to use you as an example, if that's okay.
Sure.
When you're talking about like the captioning and stuff, and the program is just not working well for you, I have to assume that that is really brutal on you and like your fingers and stuff and the different work that you're doing. Is that right? That you have to put in extra
It's just
effort to be
more
able to go
time.
in and correct them?
No, it's just time consuming, honestly, and I just hate it. I just hate having to repeat like the same 20 seconds to like make sure all the words are correct and such. And I think the
Okay.
software just sucks.
Okay.
So it's just annoying to do. I think it's just the
Yeah.
software. Like I try like the Instagram captioning is software caption actually is really good surprisingly for being free. And I
Mm-hmm.
had to pay mine to work with my video editor. I don't have other options at the moment, but hopefully it'll be an update. But yeah, it is a time consuming thing. But I think like the caption thing, I think is kind of like the bare minimum for anything, honestly. I think that should just be a standard. And like if you're like, I'm just a small person, like a person that's a larger following should definitely just do it just out of just do it. They have the money for it, and they just gotta dedicate, I don't know, $50 to
Yeah,
$100
it's,
to do it. Like just do it. Like it's
yeah.
not. I mean, it also helps with the captioning because like YouTube like grabs the words and like puts in like other other like suggestions and stuff, and like helps with the algorithm. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you should do it too. So like if you
Yeah.
look at that aspect, I mean, I do it for the disabled community, but yeah, like it's just time consuming. But like I think capture should definitely be a. I think you can't like do like the blind community. That's a small group. I can't like accommodate to that. And like, let's say there's a seizure warning. Like I'll put like, hey, it's seizure warning. I'll be like that, but I can't just like no seizure activating segment at all because I don't want like
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't accommodate everyone. Like I'll warn you, but I can't do it. I think the other thing about it's kind of like shitty. I'd like this to say out loud, but like as a disabled person, I'm so limited by myself. I don't want to be limited by somebody else anymore. Like I'm just tired. I've been surrounded by disabled people, and you're always anchored by like the least, the weakest denominator in the group. And I get that, but like for me, it hurts a lot because I'm limiting myself to that person, and it sucks for that person. I really feel for them, but like I also want to live a great life that I can go higher. But I'm always limited by that, so I have like a weird resentment against the disabled community because I'm always limited by it. But I'm also in a gray area because if I'm surrounded by able-bodied people, I'm kind of almost the anchor to that group because they can do everything and
Mm-hmm.
I can. But like I want to be carried to their level and status, and they don't really want to, and I get that. So I'm like in this weird area, but like I want to like be, I want to just do the best I can, not be limited by someone else's disability or like comfort levels and stuff. Like I have very my my bar of like highness is like really high, and stuff that I want to do is really high. And a lot of people just not comfortable with that, and I get it. But
Mm-hmm.
like I want someone to meet me at my level. I can't. I'm just tired of living at a lower level than I really want to because at the end of the day, I'm making that person happy, but I'm not being happy. as like a weird catch-22.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because I think there is there's extra pressure on those of us that are disabled to put in the extra effort in order to make things like more inclusive and accommodating folks. And some people get really some people are really ugly about it. They're just douchebags. I'll just come out and say it. And, they may say something to like, well, you didn't caption that video. And this is someone who has like limited mobility in their fingers or something like that. And I'm like, listen, you can't expect someone to sacrifice their health in order to be, I don't want to say be more inclusive, but it's a balancing act because
It
in the
requires
reason
a
that
lot
I
of effort
mentioned,
to be inclusive. A lot of just,
yeah,
especially if you're not disabled, it requires just a lot of like thinking, I guess, about it. And like they just, I like the thing I added, like sometimes the disabled community they get too angry at able-bodied folks for not knowing or understanding, and I'm like, really? Like talk to people that were not disabled to disabled. Like you wouldn't know anything about anything either. Like don't put yourself on a high horse because they don't understand because they would understand either. Like you don't understand the topic because it never mattered to you. Like disabled people. I think they're just too angry, and I get kind of the anger of it, but you can't be mad at people for doing that. Like doesn't benefit at all. Like look at most charities. Most charities are not because they're nice. It's that they have like someone in their family that had this disability and stuff. Like no,
mm-hmm.
every person that cares about disability are affected because they've been affected by someone personally in their life. Most people don't just want to jump into disability because they just like disability unless you have like a fetish or something. And most of the time it's like there's some connection to it. No one just jumps in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm so passionate about like lived experience because you're absolutely right. I mean, if someone grows up in a way that they have been completely sheltered from being around people that have, let's just use physical disabilities, mobility disabilities, they're clueless. They're clueless because they've not interacted with those people. They don't have like a personal connection. They're not going to go out and say, oh, I want to read a book to understand what it's like to be in a wheelchair or
Mm-hmm.
what it's like to have a bionic arm, right?
Yeah.
It's always like, they've been personally affected. They've seen an article about someone that was, inspired or motivated them, to learn more. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, we do carry a lot of anger with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in terms of being angry, I will get angry at these big ass corporations that that they have the resources to be able to do things in a more accessible way, right? But if I get angry because, someone said, I can't even think of an example right now, which is odd, but if it's an individual person, like you have to give them a little bit more grace. You have to give them some compassion the same way that you're wanting that empathy in return. And so one of the things that I love to do, like when I'm speaking at conferences or I'm teaching, is talk about lived experience. I'll talk about the experiences that I have. So those people know now it's not reading a case study. It's not seeing, inspiration porn somewhere online. They're actually hearing about my lived experiences or the experience of someone that I know. And what I want people to do is like when they're thinking about inclusion and accessibility is for it to come naturally, right? I don't want them to feel like they have to go look up all of these guidelines and rules and reach like a certain percent. That's for accessibility experts to do, right? But I want people to just stop and think about the little things that you can do to make things better. So like you said, seizure warning, like, you'll toss up a seizure warning. That's good. You're doing captions. That's great. You did an image description. And that was like, or a visual description. That took just like a few seconds, right? For you to be able to say that. And so it's just like the little things. But going back to what you said, like you can't be a martyr. You cannot sacrifice yourself to try to accommodate everyone, especially when you have a disability. And so it is a catch-22, and it is like hard to try to figure out that balance between wanting to make things accessible for others, but also living your life and focusing on yourself and ensuring that you're okay, that you're living for yourself, right?
I mean,